Welcome back. This next section is called A Call to Arms. Key terms. Is that annoying yet? Anyway, key terms: Continental Congress, Minutemen, Loyalists, and Patriots. There's quite a bit of information in this section. So we're going to start with the Continental Congress, and I'm going to give you a definition later in this slide. But we need to remember what was happening. Boston was being targeted. So Bostonians agreed to boycott all British goods, but they also decided that there needed to be a gathering. Those in Massachusetts are not the only ones that are going to be targeted. If the British can control one colony, why can't they control all of them? So from Massachusetts to Virginia, MA to VA, word spread through the colonies that they must unite and protest, or else they would lose their liberties. So in September 1774, 56 men arrived in Philadelphia. They created the Continental Congress. This is your key term, and here's the definition. It's a political body, or a government, used to represent the American interest, in particular against the British. Now, there were several important delegates to the Continental Congress. Hopefully some of these faces look familiar. We can start on the lower left with the guy by the name of Patrick Henry. I said we were coming back to him. And then we have John Adams, who would go on to be the second president, and his relative, I think they were cousins if I'm correct, Samuel Adams. And hopefully we all recognize that pretty important guy on the lower right by the name of George Washington. Now these 56 men created a statement of grievances, a list of complaints that called on Parliament to repeal all of the acts that they had passed in 1763, using the argument that these laws had violated the colonists' rights. They voted to boycott all British goods and trade until that was made, until Parliament repealed all of these acts. They also passed a resolution that said each colony needs to create its own militia. Now, a militia is a government or is a military body that is loyal, and their job is to protect their state or colony, not necessarily the nation, but very local. It's also expected that if fighting would happen, it's going to start in New England, more specifically in Massachusetts. So the militia in Massachusetts trained frequently, and they made bullets, they stockpiled rifles and muskets, and they were known as Minutemen. Key term. These are companies of men who boasted they could be ready to fight in a minute's notice, hence the term Minutemen. So they were very important, especially to the Massachusetts. So while the Americans are preparing, establishing their militias, and they're boycotting, and they're doing all sorts of stuff, the British are working as well. They realize that Boston is a hotspot. So by April 1775, there were 3,000 redcoats, again British soldiers, in and around Boston. Now, the British General Gage, had learned that the Massachusetts militia had all of their arms and ammunition stored in the little town of Concord. He immediately ordered 700 troops to seize and destroy all the ammunition and artillery that they could find. Well, it was somewhat discerning to the Americans that such a thing could happen. So that they had put together a system to alert the colonists, to alert each other to what's going on. On the night of April 18th, 1775, Dr. Joseph Warren was a lookout. His job was to walk around the streets of Boston looking for any unusual activity. This was all part of the system that was going on. And he saw that there was a regiment of British soldiers marching out of this city. Now, in the middle of the night, that seems a little weird to Dr. Warren. So he rushed to alert a pretty famous guy by the name of Paul Revere and his not-so-famous companion, William Dawes. Now, Revere and Dawes had the job of riding to Lexington to warn Samuel Adams and John Hancock that the British were coming. The midnight ride of Paul Revere, all of this was to alert and to create communication among the different colonists. So these two images, the one on the right is Paul Revere's, I believe it's his self-portrait, and the one on the left is a rendition of Paul Revere's ride. What happens to William Dawes? Well, nobody really remembers him. But we are going to find out what happened after Paul Revere's ride in the next PowerPoint. You need to be taking the next quiz. Actually, I think 2.4 and 2.5 are one quiz. So tune into the next slide, and then you'll have a quiz.